You're listening to the Telltale channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
Hi, Ellen. This is Julie from Indiana. I'm watching Hannah Gadsby's comedy special on Netflix, and she had a great bit on anti-vaxxers, and she called them a cult. I was just curious your thoughts on that. Thank you so much.
Really interesting question. Are anti-vaxxers a cult? As a category, I'd say no. Just as a categorical definition, like somebody who doesn't want to be vaccinated, I would say no, that's not a cult in itself. But there are anti-vax groups out there that are very cult-like. They're like Facebook groups and Reddit subreddits and things like that are very insulated and spread progressively more extreme ideas to each other in the form of memes and jokes and stuff like that. They'll start posting really extreme memes, and the more extreme and in line with the belief system that you are, and in some cases the more conspiratorial you are, the higher your status raises within the group. It's a decentralized, non-focused cult, as in not focused on an individual person. Then you have decentralized focused cults, as in focused on a specific person. Like, for example, Teal Swan or Donald Trump. Those types of groups would be decentralized focused cults. But anti-vax groups, I would say, are decentralized, non-focused cults. It has to be a very specific group, though. It can't just be like the category of anti-vaxxer or the category of, I don't know, right-wing extremist or something. It has to be a very specific group that you're talking about. They are out there. There are cults that are anti-vax, that focus around anti-vax ideology and spread misinformation about it. And another interesting thing that I've been studying and writing about and working on is the idea of cult crossover in these little decentralized groups. In centralized hierarchical cults like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormonism or Scientology or whatever else, you have this leadership, this hierarchy that defines the belief system and passes down the dogma and the doctrine to the members, right? And if somebody deviates from the dogma or the belief system, then it's cut off to prevent sects, like sects, from forming. Like Jehovah's Witnesses don't have any sects that have formed. Mormonism has sects that formed, but that really only happens extremely rarely within Mormonism. Almost all of the sects formed when there was a crisis of leadership. Like when Joseph Smith died, they didn't know who should take control of the cult. One group believed it should be his son. One group believed it should be Brigham Young. One group believed this person and that person. And that led to a massive splintering of the church. And we ended up with like 10, 15, 20 different sects of Mormonism, like FLDS and Community of Christ and the LDS Church and a whole bunch of others, right? With decentralized, non-focused cults, there isn't really a hierarchy, not a strong, strict hierarchy to keep control of the belief system. The belief system is largely formed out around one specific idea and formed out the rest of the way by the members of the group spreading ideas and memes to each other and fitting on different ideas, basically, like putting them on like hats and trying on the ideas and seeing how they like them. And it's also heavily affected by who has the highest status in the group and what ideas they're spreading. So by reaffirming other people's ideas within the decentralized, unfocused group, by spreading these memes about anti-vax, and by saying, my kid didn't get vaccinated and he's not autistic, for example, people will raise their status within the group by doing things like that. And they become basically trusted, valued members of the group and raise their position in the hierarchy. So if they are members of any other types of conspiratorial groups or cults, any other decentralized, unfocused cults, there's a cross between the two sometimes. So you'll see anti-vax groups will start spreading QAnon conspiracy theorist stuff, and some of the group members will buy into it, and they'll start spreading some of that stuff in the anti-vax group too. And some of the members of that anti-vax group will go over to the QAnon subgroup to see what's happening there. There's a lot of basically cross-pollination between the groups. That's how it happens, and that's how a conspiratorial mindset really forms and solidifies in people's minds, and how extremism and radicalization get worse and worse and worse within these little internet pockets. But anyway, I'm still writing about a lot of this stuff, still forming out my ideas. Alejandro Rojas says cult of personality. I would categorize cult of personality as decentralized but focused. That's what I would call it. I call it a level 2 or a tier 2 cult. People like Donald Trump and all of his extreme radicalized followers. I'm not just talking to people who vote for him. A lot of the time, they're just normal people who just don't like the Democrats for one reason or another. That's not the qualification that makes you a cult member. The thing that makes you a cult member of a level 2 cult, decentralized, focused cult, it's the idea that you are, no matter what information you get, no matter where it's from, if it's contradicted by the leader, you always default to the leader's information, no matter what. Like, even if you see it with your own eyes. If Trump says, I don't have police in Portland, even though we can literally physically see them in front of us, if we're in Portland, we can see these people with like DHS or whatever on their, or police on their uniforms. If Trump says it, that means it's true. Period. No questions asked. Now, not everybody who voted for Trump would do that, would believe what he said, even when they're seeing it with their own eyes. But the people who do believe it, or the people who would be willing to believe what Trump says, even if their own eyes are contradicting him, that's who I would call cult members. Evan, would you say that QAnon is a subset of Trump's cult of personality, and why? That's interesting. I think QAnon is a little bit different because QAnon is actually its own subset. Yeah, I would say that it's complicated. I would say QAnon is part of the Trump cult, but they're simultaneously part of the Q cult. Q is the centralized leader that they follow. Q is a 4chan and then 8chan poster that's posting a whole bunch of stuff about, Q security clearance and trying to direct people to believe this thing or that thing, whatever else, to distrust mainstream media and all that. Q would be the main leader of the cult. I think Q probably takes precedence over Donald Trump, but that is a really interesting point. A decentralized, focused cult with basically 2 cults of personality at the top. That is an extremely fascinating thing I'm going to have to examine a little bit closer.